Hi everybody, welcome to the Family Google Hangout. We're at the Canada Agriculture and Food Museum today. My name is Melanie, and today we're going to learn all about bees. So you can see right now we're actually in the exhibition at the museum. Behind me you can see a bunch of honeycombs, and we're in the exhibition, and we're also here with a very special guest who we're going to get to soon. Just to start off with a few things about the Hangout. So we hope that everybody has a chance to ask questions throughout the Hangout. That's the point. So if you're at home watching and you have a question about bees, just type it into the question and answer box on the right-hand side using your Google Hangouts. Those should be opened. And I'll just open them on my screen. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And we'll get Nedzin to answer them as well. So Nedzin is our beekeeper, and she is an expert on bees. And so she'll be able to answer anything that you have. Also, if you do have a question, you'll be entered into a draw. So anybody who answers a question will be entered into a draw to win this really nifty USB bracelet from the museum. So you can kind of like this, and I'm not very good at it, but you can wear it, and this will be free for you, and we'll send that to you, and you'll be entered into a draw. So before we start talking about bees, I want everybody to listen very carefully when Nedzin talks, because I have a special question challenge for you. And if you can answer, I'd like you to type it into the question answer box or use the hashtag AskAgMuseum. That's AskAgMuseum. So Ask Ag Museum. You can use that hashtag on Twitter to answer the question that I have. So my question for you, and we're going to go to Nedzin in 1 second. My question for you is, what type or what race is a queen bee that we have at the museum? So what's the type of queen bee that we have here at the museum? So without delay, we're going to go to the bees, and we're going to take care of business with Nedzin. So I think she's standing by, and I'm just going to switch the camera over to her. And Nedzin, I can see you now. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So we'll let you go ahead and chat about the bees.
All right. So welcome in our Taking Care of Bees exhibition. And the Agriculture and Food Museum has been keeping bees for the last 5 years. So if you visited the museum, you may have noticed our observation hive. And we're quite lucky because it had been doing really, really well for the first 4 years. But unfortunately, last winter, the colony did not make it through the winter. It died. So that brought us quite an interesting challenge this spring, because we had to replace the dead colony with a live one. And we decided to create our very own bee exhibition colony for here. So, but before I explain how we created the colony, you need to understand a few things about honeybees. And the first one is there's actually 3 kinds of bees that live inside the beehive. The most important one is the queen. The queen bee is the mother of all the bees you see in here. And she's the only one who can lay eggs, so she's really important. And unlike what most people think, she does not sit on a throne, and she's not the one that rules the bees, all right? Her only job is to lay eggs. Second kind of bee would be the worker bee. And the worker bees, well, actually, most of the bees we see in the hive, all of them except one, are all worker bees. They're female bees, like the queen, but unlike the queen, they can't lay eggs, all right? So they can only do all the other chores, which is a lot of work. The worker bees will clean, they take care of the babies, they feed the queen, they're the ones who forage for food, produce the honey, store the food, build the honeycomb, guard the colony. So they work really, really hard, but they can't lay eggs, so they need a queen to do that. And the last one would be the drones. The drones are the male bees, and they don't have any job except to mate with a queen, and not a queen from that colony, a queen from another colony. So in the spring and in the fall and in the winter, there are no drones in a hive, and not just this one, all the hives. And the reason why is because they don't work, but they still eat food. The bees will only keep them when they think, well, maybe the other colonies might need their services. So, and if the times are getting rough, say there's a drought, or too much rain, the flowers don't produce a lot of nectar, or this winter is coming, Well, so the drones, they have to go. So the bees will literally throw them out of the colony because they don't want to feed them because they're pretty much useless at that point. So now that you understand that, the one thing that holds the colony together is the queen. The queen produces a very special, unique scent, a set of pheromones that are very, very unique to her. And it's a special smell that lets the bees know that she's there and she's doing well. Now, say our queen is getting old or she's sick, she will produce less pheromones. And that will tell the other bees, the worker bees, that the queen is not doing that great. So maybe they should think of replacing her. And to replace a queen, all they need is a female egg. And they take that egg and they move it into a special cell. Now, we don't have any in here, but we'll watch a video later and we'll see one of those. And it's a bigger cell because the queen is much bigger and she needs more room to grow. And they will feed that egg when it hatches with something very special. It's called royal jelly. And it's a bit like a goo, a whitish goo that the bees produce in their head in special glands, and they spit it out, and they spit it in the royal cell, and that's royal jelly, and it's the food of the queen, and the queen will only eat royal jelly her entire life. And because she eats that special food, her reproductive system will develop fully. And once she's a grown-up bee and she emerges out of a royal cell, she will be able to mate with the males, with the drones, and then produce female eggs. Now, the worker bees, they can also lay eggs, but they can only lay the male eggs. And well, we know the males don't work very well. They don't work very hard in the colony, so that's not very good. We need a queen to lay the female eggs. Now, say that there's so many bees in my observation hive that the queen scent becomes diluted. They're overpopulated. That will trigger something different. That will tell the bees it's time to move on. So half of the worker bees that are adult bees will literally push the queen out and they will follow her. And that's called a swarm. And that's how bees reproduce in nature. The colony will split into two. The old queen will leave with half of the workforce, and the rest of the bees behind, they will raise new queens and to replace the old one. Now, we don't want swarms here. So once in a while, what we do is we will remove some of the frames to reduce the population. Now that you understand that, we're going to tell you how we created the colony. Now, the first thing we did is we took some of the frames, like these frames you're looking at. So a frame is that piece of wood with the honeycomb in, and we want to make sure that it has BBBs. Now, what we're looking at right now, you can see those little bubbles, yellowish bubbles. Those are a bit like cocoons. So inside each of those cells, which is a bit like a crib, the queen will lay an egg, and once the egg hatches, it will turn into a larva. And that looks like a, I would say, whitish worm. And then when the larva is big enough, it will spin a cocoon and it will transform into a pupa. And that's a bit like when a caterpillar turns into a cocoon before it turns into a butterfly. But it's a very, very tiny, thin cocoon. So the workers, they want to help the larva, and they will cap it with beeswax. And that's the yellowish bubble you can see. Now, they want the larva to be able to breathe throughout the comb, so they work the beeswax in a special way so that the air can move through and they can breathe. When they make honey, they don't want the air to move in and out because the honey likes the moisture in the air and it will ferment. The bees, they don't like to drink meat. They don't like alcohol. They just want honey. So they will work the wax differently. Now, if we move the camera over here, I'm not too sure if it's going to work or not. Let's see. Oh, do we see it? I saw it. Here. Now, I don't know if you can see, but there is wax that is covering the cells. But this wax, it doesn't look like a yellowish bubble. It's kind of flat. So it's airtight so that the air cannot go inside the cell where the honey is stored. In here, do you see there's something yellowish at the bottom of the cell? That's pollen, all right? So the bees will harvest the pollen to feed their young. the adult bees don't need much pollen. They feed on nectar and honey. They need energy, but pollen is rich in protein, and the larvae, they need it to grow. All right, so I'll pass on the camera here. So when I create a colony, I need to take some frames that have those bubbles on it. And the reason why is because those bees are going to emerge soon. And the young bees, the ones that have never gone out and forage, they're not too picky on their queen. They may actually take more of a foreigner queen better. The older bees, they're a little fussy. They like their old queen, and they're less likely to accept a new one. And I take frames and I place them into a smaller beehive. And I create an orphan colony. So I make sure there's no queen on any of those frames. I move them in my little box, and I wait for a few days. And by that time, I place my order. I ordered a queen that came all the way from California. So she's a California girl, and her breed is she's a Carnolian queen. And the reason I chose that breed is because they're known to overwinter, survive winter very well. And because that was a problem here last time, I want to make sure that won't happen again, or hopefully not for a few years. So I took my new Carnolian queen, and I introduced her into the new colony. But before I do that, I have to make sure that I remove all of the royal cells, because once I put my bees together away from the mother colony, well, they suddenly realize that they're not getting the scent of the queen anymore. And that triggers an instinct. They know they have to make a new queen or they will die, because no one else will be laying those female eggs. So I go through the colony, and I have to make sure that I find each and every royal cell and I remove it. Because if I forget but one, chances are they won't take my new queen. They'll take their old queen. Well, not the old one, but the new queen that they made themselves. The bees always want to use the queen they've made. So by removing all those cells, I don't give them any more options. They either take my new queen, they don't have any fresh eggs left after a few days, and they don't have any queens and royal cells that are growing. So I place my new queen in, and you'll see that I place her in a special cage. And the reason is, if I take my queen and I just put her in there, she has her own scent, and the colony has its own scent, and they don't go well together. The bees, that's how they recognize each other. And at the entrance of the colony, that's where the guard bees are. And they know which bees to let in the colony and which ones to keep out according to their smell. So I put the queen in the cage. That way, they can't kill her. Otherwise, that's what they do. But there's a door, and the door is locked with candied sugar. And it will take a few days for the bees to eat through the sugar. And once that's done, and that my queen comes out of the cage, hopefully by that time she will smell the same as the colony, and they will accept her as their queen. And then she'll start to lay eggs. And I have to leave them alone for a week. If I go and I disturb them, it may have some undesired effect. If I stress the bees, they can then decide they don't want the queen anymore, that foreign queen, and get rid of her, and we don't want that. So I left them alone for a week, and we created 2 colonies for the museum in case one didn't work, but both worked. So one made it here, and the other one I kept home. Now we have a little video to show you, and I'll tell you what's going on in the video once it's on.
Just 1 second, we're gonna get the screen share up so you guys can see the video. I'm gonna start it now. And I think we'll just play the video. So there's no, Nadine will talk over it. There's no sound to it, so.
Oh, I think it started a little late. Oh, that's okay. It doesn't matter. So this is my smoker. And the first thing you do before you open a beehive is you smoke the bees. And the reason why is the bees communicate mostly with smells when it comes to being grumpy and aggressive. So when you blow the smoke in the colony, it's not like if you go to a room and you put music really, really loud, then people can't talk to each other anymore. They're kind of limited to 1 or 2 people next to them. Well, that's what we're doing here with the bees. Oh, okay. So we're blowing the smoke inside the colony. and they can't really organize themselves because we cut their line of communication. We can't let them talk to each other and say, hey, the beekeeper is here, let's gather our forces and strike back. Only a few grumpy guard bees will do that. And we know when they're grumpy because they buzz differently. It's very high pitched and they bump into us. So I'm blowing the smoke, and this is a frame with some bees. And the one thing I'll have to do is go through and make sure I remove all of the swarming cells. So that's only honey. So that's a frame they're filling with food. So I've placed it aside. No need to look for a swarming cell there. That's pollen. You can see the bright yellow pollen. That's probably, oh, and here we have some swarming cells, royal cells. There was one, it looked like a peanut. And there's a shot a little later where we'll remove it. So those are the bees going back to their colony. And that's the mother colony. That's the hive I took the frames from. See, I'm removing the royal cell, and you can see the white goo, the royal jelly. They're literally drowning in it. They put a lot of it in there. So we're placing the queen cage inside the colony in the brood. And that's it. We're going to close the hive. And all we'll have to do is wait for a week or so. Okay. Now you might wonder how we got the bees from here, from my place to here. And to do that, I had to use my bee brief. So you know how you come back from school with your backpack and you carry your schoolwork in it? Well, that's how I carry the bees. So all I have to do is place the frames, make sure my queen is on there, and I can also place her back in the cage if I want, just for the travel. And I put my 4 frames full of bees, and then I can close it properly. And it's very light and compact, and easy to carry, and that's it. All I had to do was put it in my car, drive to work. And now a lot of visitors come here at the museum, and they ask questions like, oh, do the bees go out? And, you know, how do they get their food? So for you tonight, we are opening the wall and letting you know how it looks like. So this is here. This is the observation hive. There are 2 little trap doors. I can close the beehive. I can close the tunnel. That way, all the bees that are inside the colony, inside the hive, cannot leave. And all the bees that are outside cannot, through the tunnel, come into the exhibition. We don't want that. So I can close the doors. And this is the tunnel, and we can actually, I don't know if you can see it well, but we can see the bees moving in and out. So it's still early. The days are long at this time of the year. So the sun is high still in the sky. So the bees are still foraging for food. And this is where the bees come in. And you can see there's a lot of activity. And there are some bees that are dancing. If we get a closer view, maybe we can see a few that are doing the waggle dance. So they do the shape of number 8. And they move their bum. Oh, there's one with pollen on its legs. I don't know if you can see the yellow bubbles. That's the pollen.
Now,
so just came back.
Yeah. We have a question actually from Twitter you can answer for us. There is a 5-year-old who would like to know how the bees make their honey.
Oh, that's a very good question. Mm-hmm. All the bees need to make honey is nectar. And nectar is something that the flowers produce. And the bees have to go and fly on many different flowers, many flowers in order to collect a lot of nectar. I have a picture here in the exhibition. This is a canola flower. Now, canola flower is about this big. Do you see my fingers? It's really tiny. So you can see that we really blew up the flower. And over here, you can see there's 1, 2 little drops of what looks like water. Oh, there might be another one here. And this is the nectar. So the bees have to fly on many, many flowers. And it will actually, one bee will make about a little over a teaspoon, I think. What is it? See, there's not even a teaspoon. You see there's a teaspoon here? That's how much honey a bee will make in its lifetime. So it has to work really, really hard. And all it needs is actually nectar. And we have nice little illustrations here, and I can show you how they make the honey. So the first thing the bee does is it's going to look for flowers. And the bees can see a light that we can't see with our eyes. It's called ultraviolet. And the petals of the flowers usually have a pattern, and it tells the bee where to look for the nectar. The bee will land on the flower, and its tongue is a bit like a straw. There's a hole in it, and it's going to sip the nectar, and it's going to store the nectar in its honey stomach. And then it's going to visit many, many other flowers. Once the stomach is full, it's going to fly back to the beehive. Now, this is a foraging bee. It only forages. See, they have a very, their workforce is very well divided. So the bee is going to spit out, a bit like, spit out the nectar, and another bee is going to sip it. And then it's going to spit it out again, and another bee is going to sip it. And bees are going to do that back and forth. And that's because inside their honey stomach, they have certain acids that will start to transform the sugar inside the nectar from a more complex sugar into a simpler sugar that tastes more sweet. Then, I'm pretty sure you kids like to blow bubble gums, right? Well, that's what the bees do with the nectar. They're going to spit it out and almost make like a bubble, like a bubble gum. And that's to help it dry up, because the nectar is very, very liquid. It has a lot of water in it, way too much water. So they want to reduce how much water there is. So they're going to let the warm air inside the beehive dehydrate, remove, evaporate some of that water. When half of the water is out, they're going to go inside the cell in the beehive, and they will spit the honey, the nectar. They will spit it inside here. And then they're going to ventilate. They're going to move the air to complete the evaporation, remove even more water. And when there's only about 20%, 17 to 20% of water left, that's when it's time to cap with the beeswax. Remember how I said that it's airtight? It's a bit like putting the lid back on the jar. That way the honey won't spoil. And they found some honey in Egyptian tombs, so that's thousands of years old, that you can still eat. It's still edible. So if honey is kept well, it will pretty much last forever.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Nadine. I think you answered that person's question. And so I'm going to quickly switch. We're going to go back to my camera. I'm going to chat a little bit with people and remind them that actually they can answer the question. So we had a question posed to at the very start, and that was, what type of queen bee do we have here at the museum that Nadine was looking at? Know the answer, type it into Twitter using the hashtag AskAgMuseum or into the Q&A in the Google Hangout, and you'll be entered to win a draw. If you have another question of any kind for us, like the question we got about how do bees make honey, we'll also enter you into the draw if you use Twitter or the Google Plus app to ask the question. We'd be very happy to answer. Right now, Nadine is going to set up for a really cool activity. We're going to learn how to make an activity that has bees in, and I think you guys will really like it. So she's some helpers with her actually in the museum as well, and I think they're all kind of setting up in the kitchen right now. So just to tell you that if you're interested more in bees, you can go onto the Agriculture and Food Museum's YouTube page. So you can go either through the Agriculture and Food Museum website, which is CAF Museum, CAFmuseum.ca or .technomuses.ca. And you can find the YouTube button there, or just search it through YouTube, and you can find out how we brought that hive from the video that we can see it being installed here at the museum, which was a pretty cool experience. So right now we're going to go over to the kitchen where Nazin is set up. So Nazin, I think that your microphone is off, so if you could just turn that on and we'll get you guys all prepared, and maybe you could introduce your helpers with you today.
Okay, so everything's fine? You can see me?
Yes, we can see you. Great.
Okay, good. So I have 3 helpers with me today. There's Matthias, Jacob, and Maya. And we actually want to talk to you a little bit about pollinating insects, and not just about honeybees and what you can do to help. Now, you might have heard over the news that the bees are having a hard time, and it's not just the bees, it's all of the pollinating insects. And there are a lot of different reasons why, and it's probably a combination of, pollution, the use of pesticides, climate change, but most agree that one of the most important things is habitat. And there's a lot of habitat destruction, and less flowers for the pollinating insects to forage upon. And I want to tell you what you could actually do to help the bees, and not just the bees, the butterflies, the hummingbirds, the wasps. We don't like the wasps because they sting, but they do a big part in pollinating our plants. And the reason why honeybees are really, really important, it's not the honey, it's not the beeswax, and it's not all those other things that we think about when we think about beehive products. But most importantly, it's because of the pollination. The honeybees, when they forage for food, they transfer the pollen from one flower to another. And that pollinates the flowers. It fertilizes the flower so that the flower can turn into a seed or a fruit. So think about things like apples and pears, plums, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, pumpkins, sunflower seeds, almonds. They're all foods that are produced because of pollinating insects. So if you want to help them, you need to help. One thing you can do is you can increase the habitat and give them some food, some flowers to forage upon. And what we have here are little bags of seeds. And it's not because a flower is a flower, it has petals and it smells good, that it's necessarily very appealing to pollinating insects. Some flowers do, they produce more nectar and more pollen. Dandelion is a really good example. People don't like dandelion, and we spray our lawn and we pull it out because we say it's a weed. But dandelion is one of the early, I would say, pollen-rich food for pollinating insects. And all the yellow you saw in the video in the frame, it's all mostly, I would say, dandelion pollen. So it's really, really important for them. So on top of leaving the dandelion out there alone, another thing you could do is plant flowers that produce a lot of nectar. And one way you can tell is that there's a tiny little illustration of a butterfly. So this means that it attracts pollinators. So that's one way you can tell, because it doesn't always say elsewhere on the package. And you can either plant it in your flower bed, or you can plant them in pots, put them on your balcony in little jars. So Matthias, Jacob, and Maya are going to plant their own little flower so that they can help the pollinating insect. And on the package, it says seed depth. So that tells us how deep we have to plant the seeds. So here, Maya, you can take some seeds, not all of them, just a few. Take a few with your finger. That's it. Okay. And a quarter deep is about quarter of an inch, about this deep, all right? So you can put the seeds here in your little pot. Put the seeds here. That's it. All right, you're doing a good job. Yeah, my other helpers are also doing a good job. And then you can press, that's it. Press on it with your finger. That's it. And then you can push the earth back on. All right. It's this easy. And all it needs now is some warmth from the sun and some water. And that's it. In a few weeks, few months from now, we're going to have food for our honeybees and our butterflies and hummingbirds. Another thing you can do if you want to help the insect is you can also plant clover in your lawn, especially white clover. It does not grow very tall, so you don't have to cut your lawn as often. It's food for the pollinating insects. It's pretty, it smells good, it stays green even if there's a drought, so you don't have to water it as often. And the grubs don't like clover, so they're not going to kill your lawn, and the skunks won't dig holes everywhere. So that's it for honeybees. If there are any more questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
So Nadine, actually, we did get a request to see the queen bee in the hive. So I'm guessing if you and Ivan can maybe walk over to the beehive right now and just maybe find that that hive. So while Nadine is moving over to find the queen bee, she'll show you what that looks like in the hive at the museum. I want to thank everybody for watching. If anybody has that answer to which type of bee we have in the museum, feel free to answer it through Twitter, again, or through the Google Hangout. That would be great. But we did get a request. We also had a question about what we can do to help the bees, and I think that Ned did a really good job explaining that before. So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch back to the camera where Ned's in, and her helpers are trying to locate the queen bee, because it's not always very obvious. But we're on you, Nedzin. So what are you looking for?
I'm looking for one bee that is slightly larger than the other ones, and often she has a court, like a circle of bees surrounding her, and those are the bees that are feeding and they're brushing her hair and they're caring for the queen. And she has a shiny, I would say, yeah, a shiny spot on her thorax. She does not have hair on her thorax like the other bees. I'm looking for her, and unfortunately she's not marked. And when I went to pick her up, they had ran out of marking pens, so I have to wait a little bit. Hopefully someone thinks you found her. Oh, sweet, that's the son of a beekeeper. Here we have it. That's the queen bee. Oh, and it's perfect. You can see her circle a little lower.
Let's see if we can see her.
Sorry.
Going to move the camera a little bit to see her. I think we're almost there. Bunch of bees swarming.
I'm trying
not swarming, but moving.
Oh, here she is.
Oh, there we go. Can you point her out with your finger?
Yeah.
Do you have enough hands and fingers? There we
right
go.
There.
Well, there you go, everybody. That's your last shot of the queen bee. So I'll leave you with this image, and we're going to say good night. And you can watch this video again on YouTube if you want to. Come to the bees exhibition if you're in Ottawa. If not, there's a virtual exhibition. Visit our website and all the bees. Thanks. We'll see you later. Good night.